Hey guys, Mr. Adamson here. Welcome to another lesson in Science 24. Today we're going to talk about energy. So the first thing we're going to do is go through a few definitions and a few examples. Energy itself, energy is the ability to do work, and this can cause changes to the temperature, the shape, the speed, or the direction of an object. Now there are two specific types of energy, and that is potential energy, and this is where energy is stored. So say you're at the top of a ski hill and you're going to go skiing, and you are just stopped at the top, not moving. You have potential energy to go down the hill. So it's that stored energy before something starts moving. Then as you start moving, you're converting your potential energy into kinetic energy. And kinetic energy is energy due to motion. That's when you're going, that's when you're moving. So you're sitting in your desk. The bell, you have potential energy, you're not moving. All of a sudden the bell rings, you get up to move. Well, that potential energy that you had stored in your body, you convert it into kinetic energy and start moving out of the classroom. Now, forms of energy, there are different forms. We're going to talk about solar energy. This is energy from the sun. Solar energy is the most important type of energy we have. Without it, life would not exist on this earth. Everything needs solar energy. Plants need it to grow. We need to eat plants. We need vitamin D from the sun. Everything requires solar energy. There's thermal energy. This is energy which provides heat. So anytime there's heat given off of an object. Wind energy obviously is from the wind. That's where you see those big wind turbines out in fields. Looks like big propellers of a plane. And geothermal energy, these are sites of thermal energy within the Earth's surface. So from the inside the core of the Earth where it's really, really hot, where you have close possibly to the Earth's surface. So if this is the Earth here, we have the really hot core in the middle. And then we have these areas underneath the core here where it gets a little closer to the surface here. And that's where people can drill down and they can get the heat from being close to that inner core temperature. Now talking about energy conversions, and the big thing about energy conversions is that you have to have an input energy, you have to have something to change that input energy, and then you have to have output. So input energy is energy that enters a system, and it can be in a multitude of different ways. It can be coming in like any of those other previous types of energy I talked about, solar, geothermal, wind. The converter then, this is the system where the energy is changed from one form into another. So usually a converter is kind of like a generator. And the output energy, this is the energy that leaves a system. And usually in our society, in our day and age, this is converted into electrical energy. Now, what you can see here in this example is to deal with the human body. So the input energy here. So input energy is the chemical energy stored in the glucose in our muscle tissue. So when we eat food, we take the glucose, the sugars from that food, and we store it in our body, and we need it for later times that we're going to move, that we're going to be physically active. And it creates a type of energy called ATP, called adenosine triphosphate. However, athletes train so their muscle tissue will convert energy in the most efficient way possible, so get the most of the energy that they have stored. Now, energy conversions occur at the cellular level, and glucose is transported to the muscle cells by the blood, where it's used to create this ATP energy I talked about. Now, from other science classes before, I'm sure you guys have all heard the term mitochondria within a cell, where you're like, oh, that's the powerhouse. Well, the mitochondria is the converter. The chemical energy in the glucose is converted into another form of chemical energy that can be used for a specific purpose, such as a muscle contraction. And then the output energy is the movement of your muscle cells. And the muscle cells move by contracting. So input energy is taking in the food we eat and use that glucose that's stored in our body. That's then transferred to our muscle cells where the converter, the mitochondria, produces that power. So like it's a powerhouse. And then we get our output energy, the movement of our muscle cells. Very simple diagram you can see here just with a flashlight. The input energy is the two batteries right here. The converter is with the switch right here, taking the energy from the batteries, and the output energy would be the light energy that we see when you turn a flashlight on. Now, what this is also showing here is the potential energy that we have in food, or that you have in batteries. So there's potential energy or potential chemical energy in food. So that glucose that's stored within the food and all the sugars and all the nutrients that we need, and it is converted to the kinetic energy for our muscles to move. So in order for our muscles to move, we have to eat food and take the energy from that food. And again, the converter would be the mitochondria. Oh. Now another thing we can see here is the potential chemical energy stored in food is also converted to the thermal energy to keep us warm. And now without the potential energy within that food and without being converted in our body, we'd freeze to death, we'd be cold. It helps keep our muscles warm, it helps keep our bodies warm. Now the next slide here is going to show the law of conservation of energy. And the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Energy can only be changed from one form to another. So just like I talked about in that previous slide, you take the chemical energy, the potential chemical energy within that food, and it's converted into kinetic energy to move our muscles or thermal energy to keep us warm. It's being converted from one process to another. It's always being changed, but it's never lost. So it doesn't just disappear. Now, the law of conservation of energy can also be applied here with input energy and output energy. And usually, input energy equals output energy. But what this top part is showing, that if I had 100% on this side, I'd have 100% being outputted on this side. And that's just not the way things work. No energy process is 100% efficient. It's not always going to change 100% from the way it was to another way. So what we really have here is our input energy. Say we start with 100%, and then we use only 85% of that energy. Well, where did the rest go? It's not going to disappear like we said. Well, it's probably going to be waste. So meaning we're not going to use it, but it's still another form of energy. So that other 15% is going to be over here. So you can now add to your understanding the law of conservation of energy. For any energy conversion, the amount of input energy is the same as the amount of output energy. But some of the output energy is useful and the other output energy is wasted. Now, remember this part here. This one is really important. Now, the last type of conversion we're going to talk about is with a pendulum. And a pendulum kind of goes back and forth and really shows a good description of the way energy conversions work. So this first point here. How does potential energy differ from kinetic energy? Well, we know that potential energy is stored energy. Kinetic energy is energy due to motion. Okay, question number 2. How is the law of conservation of energy demonstrated by the movement of the pendulum? Well, let's say we start at point A right here. And if we look right here, we have ME, that means mechanical energy. Mechanical energy is kinetic energy plus potential energy. That's what mechanical energy equals. But however, we see that we have a high PE, so a high potential energy, and a low kinetic energy. So you are holding, if we have a little person here right now, they're holding the pendulum, it's not moving. So it's not moving, it's stored energy, there's no motion yet. Now, as that person lets go and we start going this way, we can see right here that our kinetic energy is increasing, so it's starting to move faster, and therefore our potential energy is decreasing because it's not stored as much anymore. Then as we start going along this process, we can see that our kinetic energy is starting to decrease, so it's starting to slow down. And now what's causing our kinetic energy to slow down? Well, this is where gravity comes into play. But our potential energy, we can see right here, is increasing. And then if we get all the way back to the other side, eventually that pendulum is going to stop on the other side, and that's where you have high potential energy again and low kinetic energy. And then it's going to go back along this way and then back along this way. So you're going to start with 100%, we'll say, of potential energy on this side and 0 kinetic energy. As we go across, right in the middle here, it's going to be 50, 50. And then as we get over here, it's going to be 100% of potential energy again, and 0 kinetic energy. Now question number 3. Describe the relationship between the kinetic energy and the potential energy of the swinging pendulum at their highest and lowest points. So we just talked about the connection here in relation to the law of conservation of mass is how it's transferred from one form to the other. So from potential to kinetic and back from kinetic to potential. And question number 4, at what point in the pendulum swing is its gravitational potential energy the highest? So this pendulum is being created to swing back and forth because gravity is pulling it back and forth. So what point is the gravitational potential energy going to be the highest? Well, wherever it's 100%. So right here at point A and right here at point D. So that's it for talking about energy today. Hope you're able to take something from that. And thanks for listening.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.